Can I ask you something? When was the last time you had a conversation with someone who truly understood what your work week looked like? Not just the nice parts, but the full weight of it. Leadership loneliness is real, and it's one of the least talked about challenges, particularly for small schools. It's not just about being geographically remote. You can be 20 minutes from town and still feel completely alone in the role. The people around you care, but they don't always get it. Your partner and family, your staff, the parents in your school community, they're looking in from the outside. Today's episode is about why that isolation happens, what it costs you, and what's possible when you find your people. And I'm going to say something today that doesn't often get said out loud, and I hope you're ready for it. Welcome to Trailblazing Schools, the podcast for educational leaders at the intersection of leadership, complexity, and intelligent technology. I'm Trudy Graham. This is a space for leaders navigating uncharted territory. We explore strategic leadership, ethical innovation, and how AI can strengthen the deeply human work of education. Here's what I think happens. Small school principals fall through the cracks of almost every professional development program or support system that exists. Most PD is designed for larger schools. The advice, the examples, the solutions, they all assume you have an admin officer or a deputy or a team around you, and you're sitting there thinking, that's never going to work for me. Your cluster meetings are valuable, but they too come with an invisible ceiling. You don't always feel safe being completely honest with colleagues who are in larger schools. They have more experience and resources and people around them to pick up the load. And if you're in a cluster of small schools, you may be competing for enrolments with your colleagues or living in each other's community, or they're your best friend. Now, your regional supervisor, they care. I know this because I was one. For over 8 years, I worked as an assistant regional director, and in that role, I supported up to 20 small schools at a time. And I can tell you with complete honesty that the care was genuine. But here's what I also know, and I'm going to say it out loud because I think you deserve to hear it. System leaders are under enormous pressure to deliver better student outcomes. And in a world where NAPLAN results are the visible measure, time gets prioritised accordingly. A school of 300 students with multiple cohorts sitting NAPLAN draws attention differently than a school of 18 students with none in the NAPLAN years. Some of you, you've lived that reality. It's the visit that didn't come. You haven't seen your supervisor for months, maybe years. It was the call that was shorter than you needed, or it didn't come at all. And it's the sense that your school was just a little too small and a little too far to be at the top of anyone's list. And I'm not saying this to criticise the system. I'm saying it because you already know it, and pretending otherwise just doesn't help. It doesn't help you. And then there's the people right beside you. Your teaching partner, your staff, the parents in your community. They care deeply, but the role puts invisible walls around what you can share with them and when. There are things that simply aren't appropriate to offload onto colleagues who work for you or parents who have a stake in your decisions. And you know that, so you carry it all on your own. So you soldier on, you get good at it, and somewhere along the way, soldiering on starts to feel like leadership, except it's not. It's survival. The real cost isn't just to you, it's to your decision making, your energy, and then your ability to lead your school with clarity and purpose, not just to get through the week. So let me take you back. It's 1994, and I've been appointed to my first teaching principal role, and I'm headed to Burketown. And for those who don't know, Burketown, it's 450 kilometres north of Cloncurry in far northwest Queensland, up in the Gulf of Carpentaria. And in those days, 180k of that road was dirt, and it felt impassable for about 5 months because of the wet season. Cut off completely. No go, you'll get bogged. I'd come from a school with a staff of over 50. I had colleagues everywhere, professional conversations at lunch and after school, a whole network of people who understood the work and what we were trying to achieve together. And in Burketown, it was me and my teaching partner, Jill. Jill, if you're listening, hi. 33 students, year 1 to 7. 29 of them were Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children with beautiful, complex lives and learning needs. And I wanted to get it right so badly. Jill was a brilliant teacher, genuinely. She was exceptional, but she had no experience as a principal. She couldn't tell me what the role required of me because she'd never done it. And beyond that, there were things I simply couldn't take to her. Challenges around the school and the weight of the accountability that sat with me as the principal. It just wasn't appropriate. That's not a reflection on Jill, it's just the nature of the role. And the parents in that community, I had wonderful relationships with them, but you don't offload your leadership challenges onto the community you're there to serve. Again, those walls. Not because people don't care, because the role has boundaries, and those boundaries can become a cage if you have nowhere else to go. What I needed and what I eventually built around me was with other principals. People who were living a version of the same role I was living, who understood the particular weight of being the only one. And the phone, it was a lifesaver. I built relationships with principals at neighbouring schools and attended organised teleconferences. Remember, this was the mid-90s. Microsoft Teams was not a thing. Zoom was not a thing. It was a staticky landline and a lot of commitment. And the rare times that we gathered in person, usually in Cairns at a conference or a regional event, I took every moment and made it count. There were conversations over meals, catching people in the breaks. Relationships were built at the bar after a long day of sessions because that was often where the real talk happened. How many times have we said that? Those connections sustained me. They were precious and invaluable, and I never took them for granted. And last week, one of those principals reached out to me out of the blue. And this year marks 30 years since I left Burketown. 30 years. That connection was forged across a terrible phone line in northwest Queensland. That is the power of finding your people. If you see yourself as a trailblazer and you're looking for structured, strategic support to lead with clarity and conviction, visit trudygraham.com.au/connect. That's where leaders begin the conversation about working together. I'd welcome the opportunity to partner with you. So what do I want you to take from that story and from what I said earlier about the system? Well, there's a few things. Firstly, the loneliness was never inevitable. It was a structural gap. In the 90s, I had to build connection with ingenuity and a phone. Today, the tools exist, But what's shifted, what's missing for most small school principals isn't access, it's permission to prioritise themselves. That's a different problem, and it's one we can solve. Second, I want to be clear about what I said earlier about system leaders and NAPLAN pressure. I'm not pointing fingers at individuals. The people in those roles are working hard and they care. But systems create accountabilities, and accountabilities shape behaviour. And when accountability is measured in visible results at scale, small schools with small cohorts can slip down the priority list. That's not malicious, but it is real. And naming it matters, because if you've been waiting for the system to close that gap for you, I want you to stop waiting. The support you need, you're going to have to seek out. And the good news is, it exists. Third, for many teaching principals, their role is their very first step into leadership. You're brand new. Learning on the job and the support you get in those early years shapes the leader you become. You deserve more than what the system's bandwidth allows. That's not a complaint, it's a call to action. Fourth, those invisible walls, the ones that stop you talking to your teaching partner about the full complexity of your role or offloading onto your life partner or parents. They're real and they're appropriate, but they shouldn't leave you with nowhere to go. One of the principals in my Leaders Learning Circle said something that stayed with me. She described wanting other adults, not just any adults, but people who she could have professional, deep, and supportive conversations with. People who weren't embedded in her school or her community. That wasn't available to her until she discovered it. And fifth, the connections compound. Those relationships I built in Burketown in 1994 are still alive 30 years later. The investment you make in finding your people doesn't disappear when a program ends or a term is over. I consider my years in Burketown as my best professional experience, and those relationships sustained me. It became a part of who I am as a leader, and it will become a part of who you are as a leader. Before we get to the next steps, I want to leave you with one question. Who in your professional life right now truly understands what your work week looks like, and when's the last time you talked to them? And here's what I want you to do this week. One thing. I want you to reach out to one peer, a school leader you respect, someone who gets the small school context, and book a call. Not an email, a call. Maybe 20 minutes. You don't need an agenda. You just need to say, I've been thinking about how isolating this role can feel, and I want to change that. Can we connect regularly? That's how I started in Burketown. That's how the best professional relationships I've ever had began. Someone picked up the phone and said, hey, let's support each other in what we do. And if you don't have someone like that in your world right now, that's okay. That's actually exactly why I built the Leaders Learning Circle. Because leadership need not be lonely, and you shouldn't have to do this alone. There's a link in the show notes if you want to find out more. Now let's go back to where we started. I asked you at the top, when's the last time you had a conversation with someone who truly understood what your work looked like? If you can't answer that easily, that's your sign. Not to feel bad about it, but to do something about it. Because the work you're doing matters enormously. The kids in your school, they're lucky to have you. And you deserve to have people in your corner who know exactly what that work costs, and they celebrate it with you anyway. Until next time, take care. You've been listening to Trailblazing Schools with me, Trudy Graham. If this episode brought someone to mind, share it with them. You'll find further reflections, practical resources and leadership tools in the show notes. Until next time, lead with courage, seek clarity and keep trailblazing.